Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Now, we've got a very special episode in that we're going to be featuring our very first student who is currently participating in the beta test of our career services offering. Now, Justin Miller has just under 10 years of experience within his profession. So he's got 9 years of marketing experience where he's been consulting in the side, and then he's also got 3 or 4 years of experience working hands-on full-time in an analytics or an analytics adjacent role. And what we're going to do in this episode is we are going to facilitate a conversation with Nathan Gould. Now, Nathan Gould has a very strong background in that he went to an Ivy League. He went to Yale. Then he has kind of parlayed that into an analytics career, but he's also an entrepreneur. But most relevant for this conversation is that he has experience being in the seat of a hiring manager. So this is a fantastic conversation where Justin gets to talk with the exact type of person that he is going to be sitting in front of as he's applying for his next analytics job. I just got off a follow-up call with Justin where we talked through the insights that he gained from talking with Nathan. And the biggest insight that he found is that Nathan thinks he's restricting his job search just unnecessarily so. Right now, Justin's thinking, or up until this point, has been, I'm targeting name brand multi-billion-dollar companies because I want a higher salary. And after talking with him earlier today, we've kind of realized that that's somewhat shaky or faulty logic. He is being actively recruited for much smaller organizations. So think between 50 and 100 million in revenue. And he's even within his first round saying, hey, I'm looking to make between 90 and 120,000. And he is getting into the second round. So he hasn't really taken those opportunities very seriously, but we talked through a potential game plan that can really accelerate his career. So one of the opportunities that is actively talking to him is they're about 72 million in overall revenue. And we came up with a game plan of we can position Justin as the analytics expert within that entire company. So right now they are Excel based, but he can mention in his interview that, hey, I can build an infrastructure around all of this data and all of this knowledge that you're manually creating. And what he can do is functionally position himself as the CIO of that company. So not only will he be making quite a bit more from his current position, but he's also positioning himself for leadership and quite a bit of growth. So maybe he works that job for 5 years, but think about the amount of high quality stories that he can gather over that time frame. So number one, he can say, I built out the entire infrastructure for this business. I'm now managing it. Maybe there are people that are starting to be hired under him, so they can start expanding the scope of that infrastructure. The possibilities are essentially limitless. And I just wanted to highlight this conversation that we had just to show you the kind of coaching and the kind of insights that you might get if you're interested in signing up for our career services program. Now, this is not for people who are trying to break into the space. We've gotten a ton of feedback from people saying, hey, I'm 5 or 10 or even 15 years in my career. I need some advice on how to get to the next level. That's what this career services offering is focusing on. There's a link in the description of this video if you're curious about learning more about our career services package. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this conversation.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. And we've got a special one for you here today. We are talking to Nathan Gould and Justin Miller. Nathan has been working as an engineer for many, many years, and Justin is a proud member of the Silvertone Analytics program. And so, Nathan, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Thanks, and very good to be here. So let's see, I'm about 12, 13 years into my career, graduated college in 2010 with a degree in applied math and a vague interest in using data to sort of help companies do what they're doing. And I also was into clean tech at the time, which I still am, but not as much professionally. So my first job was at a company called Enernoc. It was a clean tech company focused on helping the grid stabilize in times of electricity shortage. So, for New Yorkers, last week was probably one of those weeks where the grid was under some stress. Lots of people with their ACs on, and so what Enernoc would do is they worked with commercial and industrial companies who are willing to provide load flexibility. So during those shortage hours during the year, they would shut down some of their equipment and other sort of electricity consuming devices. And what Enernoc would do was sort of bundle that capability up and then go to the grid operator and say, hey, we have 20 megawatts of load flexibility, and sell that to the grid. So you can imagine that's a very data intensive activity. You need to sort of be able to not just commit to that contractually, but then actually go and measure it. So I was kind of in the middle of that, looking on one hand at sort of these grid operators and how the rules they defined to measure the value of grid flexibility, and then also working with people sort of deploying Internet of Things devices to these commercial and industrial facilities to collect electricity consumption data that we would then sort of process to verify to the grid operators that we were actually delivering the load flexibility services that we promised. So my role at first was it was, I think, energy analytics associate or something like that, which basically meant number cruncher. I spent my first summer in giant slow Excel spreadsheets, just to calculate, like doing the actual calculation process. Was not my favorite thing, especially coming out of college. It was a bit of a letdown, because in college they give you this sort of idea that you're going to be at least, for me, I went to Yale, which is, as you know, a prestigious school, and they sort of drill into their students that they're gonna
You're gonna be the
achieve
big
great
man,
things. And
the
there I
big
was,
cheese.
to be the big cheese, and I was there just turning the crank on this giant calculator. But I learned the blessing there was that I became like absurdly good at Excel, so I could like have my eyes closed and just be using keyboard shortcuts and knew all the formulas. And it actually made, so after that first 6 months, I switched into a role there where I was actually, it was a bit more of like a business focused strategic role, but still like quantitative. And my Excel chops like helped me a ton. Yeah, so I had a really good 3 years there. I learned a lot about like the energy industry, finance, or finance and accounting, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, a lot of my friends were off in San Francisco doing the tech thing, making money and having fun. And I was like, hey, I want to do that. And I didn't study computer science undergrad, but I did. I had some exposure to coding and money saved up. No real responsibilities. So I decided to found my own energy analytics company. So I just sort of went off as Nathan, and I built a software product. I had to learn a ton to do this, right? I didn't really like know how to build an app at the time, but got a little help from a friend, and I was off to the races building this thing, and did that for about a year and a quarter. Like I never sold it in the way I envisioned selling it. Now building it led to some like really cool consulting opportunities that were kind of adjacent to what I was doing. But I ended up, after a little over a year, just taking a full-time job as a data scientist with one of my clients. So that's kind of how I got back into the sort of standard like data science tech track at startups, and sort of in particular like the sort of Silicon Valley, New York like flavor of venture-backed startups. So that's kind of where I spent my last 8 years, and I can talk through the next 8 years, but I'll pause there in case you have any questions about chapter
so
1.
it's interesting that you bring up your previous experience working both in consulting and at a more formal company. a lot of people, when they're first starting out, they are a little bit concerned on where they should place themselves. I remember for me
Yeah.
thinking about the benefits of working for a corporation. It's like that number salary can really draw you. But at the same time, I've been doing consulting for a while, and I feel like I've learned a lot of hard skills that I probably would not have gleaned working for, full time at a company. What's your take on something like that? The differences.
Yeah, I mean it's a very different feeling of being a full-time employee versus a consultant or really anyone independent, right? Um, you, I think the biggest thing for me was just conceptualizing your time very differently. Like as an employee, it's you're getting paid the same amount regardless of how long it takes you to accomplish one task. And sure, you want to be efficient, you want to impress your boss, you want to do right by the company, but you're not thinking about the direct connection between how you're focusing and how that's going to affect your sort of future financial outcomes. Whereas when you're independent, it's totally the reverse of that. It's every minute you spend is a decision about how to invest your time in your professional future, which is not untrue when you're at a company. Like it's kind of it's the same one way or another in that you're adding value to the world, you're engaging in some contractual relationship with with other companies, other people. But yeah, somehow when you're a full-time employee of a company at a corporation, you kind of can forget that that's the nature of the relationship. So I feel like being independent sort of takes the mask off of that and lets you kind of yeah, sort of it forces you to have the entrepreneur hat on all the time because you're not getting that paycheck. You have to think about where the money's coming from, where it's going, and build.
Right. I've heard it's pretty easy to, some of these big tech companies, it's pretty easy to kind of blend in and become just another, number on somebody else's Excel sheet higher than you.
Yeah,
But it's there's just also a certain level of, you know, telling yourself that you're going to be, like, let's say you're going into data analytics, and you say, okay, I'm a data analyst. You're like labeling yourself as that. It's almost like you kind of have to fill those shoes, you know, or else you're being dishonest, and people recognize that. Um, so specifically when it comes to applying for, a company, um, you've worked at a few over the years, so I'm sure you know your way around an interview. Um, how do you go about how do you go about how did you go about marketing yourself when you first got into the field?
yeah. So the first job I got a little bit less because I was marketing myself as a data analyst. In fact, at the time, I don't think I knew the data analyst was a job title. And the title data scientist, which I had later on, was the first like data title that I had.
Hmm.
That I don't think existed at the time, or if it did, it was very early. And I've already put a put a date on myself, so I can say that without much risk. But that yeah, so Enernoc, the company I was talking about, that was my first job, the sort of Excel focused one. I got that job by networking as someone who's interested in clean tech, who sure was kind of quantitatively minded and analytical, but it was I was just a guy looking for a clean tech job, and going to conferences, sort of getting to know companies and getting people to introduce me to other people. Got a little bit of help from my dad, who I was part of the reason why I was interested in clean tech was he was working on wind farm development at the time, and we talked a bunch about it, and I thought it was cool and sort of like a nice mission. So I got interested in it as well and started I had two internships in college that were sort of in that field. So by the time I graduated, I had a resume that looked like like a guy who should be given a job in clean tech.
Yeah, so you built that as your personal brand.
Yeah, you could say that. I certainly wasn't thinking about branding at the time, but I was stumbling through it, man. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, and you're willing to pay me money? Let's go. I wasn't that strategic, but I
Well,
did.
elaborate
It worked
on
out
that
well enough.
struggle. Elaborate on that struggle a little bit, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening right now that share that same common struggle of, how do I ask for money for my marketable skills,
Yeah, I mean, like that's a real transition that people go through in their life, right? Like, you know, I had the odd job, tutoring this or that, I ran a cafe in the basement of my college for like $11 an hour. But I didn't have like a professional job until after college. And yeah, just, you don't have life experience that teaches you what you're worth, or how people sort of think about how businesses think about value, and what an employee adds, and any of that. So yeah, I was pretty clueless. I knew and I've always been sort of driven by my interest, right? Like I was interested in you know doing data analysis and math, and that was sort of like I liked doing that. And I was interested in clean tech, and that putting those together was kind of it was not so much a financial decision for me. It was like, boy, I better find something to do that is interesting, and that someone will hire me for. And keep in mind, 2010, the job market was much different from it has been the last few years, right? Like this was coming out of the recession,
Mm-hmm.
so people were not giving away jobs like candy. It was like you had to try to get a job, especially
Yeah.
if you were, not experienced. Even coming out of Yale, right? It was, and that Yale is tends to have high job placement rates.
Right.
Um,
Right. Well,
so yeah, for me, like, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So for those of people who are, they don't have that work experience, right?
Yeah.
Um, let's say they're just starting out in some basic data visualization software. Um, would you recommend that they try to work with like as many sample data sets as possible, or would you say that in your experience you've gathered a little bit more from working with, a like a real company's data set, one that might be not so clean,
Yeah. So if you're just starting out and trying to get a leg in the door in analytics, I think you need some sort of hook, right? And knowing SQL, and knowing Tableau. I think those sorts of things are maybe table stakes, and very good, and like can get you a job in data. And in fact, I mentioned I was a hiring manager. I built out a data team. I hired people like that, right? It worked out great. But I think if you want to optimize your chances and get as interesting and potentially high paying a job as possible, using industry or domain as kind of like a wedge into the space can be really good. So rather than just analyze whatever data set, get interested in something, get interested in a topic, and analyze data about that and write about that. Become kind of like, what was I was just kind of chatting with a friend the other day about the EV charging space, and there's a bunch of companies that are doing, deploying EV chargers, and there's all this public data on it. Someone who wants a data job should go analyze the heck out of that data and create some blog posts and interactive visualizations, and then go to apply to some of those companies, and tell them they can help them optimize the location of their EV chargers, or something like that, right? Like there's that, because if you do that, you reach out to one of those companies, they'll want to hire you. They're not You're not going to be selling to them, they're going to be selling to you by that point, I think.
Yeah, so real quick, I want to bring in Justin here for a second, because Justin has been working with he's been working with some really quantifiable numbers. We were talking earlier, Justin, about things that you've brought up in your interview. Do you want to cover some of those things real quick? You're muted, by the way, Justin.
Oops. Oh, yeah. So sure. Some of the things that as far as like with what I deal with in my day-to-day job is some of the KPIs will be like productivity or like sales, and it may seem a little basic, but as we dive deep on the e-commerce side of things, like the in-stock percentage for retail items, when it comes to the productivity side, things such as the path as to which a shopper may shop for an item, and just all that efficiency that comes along with it. What does this percentage look like? So I'll collaborate with teams. Another big one is we call it concessions, which is it covers a lot of things when it comes to expired, rotten, or moldy products, or products being damaged, or out of temperature, and just a lot of food safety issues like that. So like really looking at those metrics and seeing how we can improve those. And just diving more deep into the data sets and really seeing like what is it that we're doing wrong, what is it that we're doing right. A perfect example is we had a product that no matter what continuously in store, it shows that we had the highest percentage for it not being in stock. As I was able to dive deeper into it, come to find out, we hadn't carried the product for 6 months. But lo and behold, it's still inside the catalog for a customer to shop for, and which day to day, we're getting hit with a high percentage of it, not having it. And then this then opened up a book to so many other products within my store that we don't even carry these products anymore. They've been discontinued, but we're still being hit with this particular percentage of increase of it not being in stock. So being able to really look at those numbers and just getting creative with it and seeing like what I can do to solve the problem is something that I'm passionate about.
And so that's what you're passionate about.
That topic you just described, that's a great blog post right there. That you write that up with some nice graphs, and you got probably 10 analytics jobs.
Nice. John, he always tells me that I'm pretty humble. He was like, I think you gotta stop being humble, Justin, and just like step out. Part of this apprenticeship class, like I'm learning so much, not just about myself personally, but also on the analytical side of things too. But that's one thing that he always tells me is that, hey, don't be so humble. Like, sell yourself and get out there and just discuss those things of what you do with every day.
Yeah, Nathan, your thoughts?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'd love to hear how the job search has been going. I mean, it sounds like you've been at it for a little while, and yeah, I mean, from hearing what you've been working on, it sounds like you have some very, very strong analytics experience and a bit of a industry and domain focus as well in retail and logistics and that sort of thing, and that's a hot area. So yeah, how can we get you a job in that?
The job search has been challenging. I applied for numerous jobs. And I interview. Oh man, I interview so often. Like honestly speaking, I probably average about 2 interviews a week. In some cases, I get to the second stage of the interview or even the final stage of the interview. In some cases, I don't at all. Some of them, it's kind of been a two-way street for me where, I may have had an offer, but it didn't meet to my expectations. So kind of turned that down. Or in the instance where I don't get an offer and, it just kind of sucks. Some of the challenges that I've seen that's come into place is like, so I'm more so comfortable with, or I was comfortable with Tableau and SQL. Like for instance, and I had a question about this as a matter of fact. But like for instance, I had an interview with a company and everything was going super well. They love my personality, they love my background. It's just my creativeness and doing certain things, my analytical skills. And, they passed up on me because I didn't know Power BI at the time. And I was just like, wow, that's tough because as I dove into Power BI, like it's something that it wasn't that complicated to learn, especially coming from a Tableau background. It was kind of like, all right, you got Microsoft and then you got, let's say Apple. It's kind of like, it's not that difficult to get into, so really getting into it. But one of my questions I had in regards to that is technical skills. How important are they on a scale of 1 to 5? And if someone doesn't have them within the program, will you still hire them?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the eye of the hiring manager. And one thing I've learned both through my job searching and also sort of business development and consulting is when people don't hire you or don't kind of work with you, they don't always tell you the exact reason why. And so, they could have said, we don't know Power BI, whatever, but then the actual reason is like they didn't have the budget for it. So you have to kind of like take those bits of information with a grain of salt and not let them like form your worldview too much, because it could set you on the wrong track. It could be that they actually thought knowledge of Power BI was really important, and if they needed someone to like do a project to improve their Power BI deployment and use Power BI best practices, that's certainly possible that they needed that particular skill set and had to filter on that. But I would think if they're just looking for someone to help them with data analytics and use their data strategically, then you absolutely would hire someone who doesn't know Power BI but has all the other boxes checked. So, if I'm hiring for a data analyst on my team and I'm using Power BI, that knowing Power BI specifically is a 1 out of 5. At most, maybe a 0. Now, if it is a little bit more of a like, hey, we rely heavily on Power BI and we need like to fix our freaking Power BI instance, then yeah, maybe I'm gonna go hire a Power BI consultant for a 2-month engagement, and they better know Power BI. It's a different situation.
I think that's the direction that they were going in, because they did mention that like we really gotta have somebody with that strong, solid background of it. So
I'd be curious to hear, how are you? What does the top of your funnel look like, so to speak? What sort of jobs are you looking at? What are your kind of criteria, and how are you reaching out to them?
So LinkedIn is a big portal for me. I've kind of learned the formula with LinkedIn, like the more you get active and post and, just like and share things, and, it really opens up a lot more windows. But Dice.com has been a huge one for me. Dice has a lot of tech jobs, and just really opening up a profile there and showing your resume. I sat down with a generalist, so to say, like an HR person, really went through my resume and like dove deep and really got it to the point where like I've got so many great compliments on it. I really think the resume really opened up a lot more doors for me to then be able to tell my story in the interview, and like to get offers or to just really get my foot in the door. So like that's really how I've been just going about the job search and just applying for things. Some of those portals and the good old Google.
So just real
and
quick,
so
Justin.
It sounds like you have. Go ahead.
Real quick, Justin, do you want to go ahead and pull up your LinkedIn so that people can see who are watching?
Oh yeah, sure.
Nathan, you can continue. Sorry, that's all.
Yeah. Let's dive in. So I think I was just going to ask Justin, are you having with this profile up on Dice? I haven't heard of it, but I assume they can view your profile and reach out to you, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So are you getting more interviews through kind of inbound stuff on Dice, or are you still doing mostly interviews from outbound?
I get a lot of interviews from inbound stuff with Dice. A big one for Dice is I get hit from a lot of recruiters. A lot of recruiters do filter through, and like they'll set me up for the position, up for the interview, and it'll flow from there.
Okay, so what's the typical title for one of these roles?
So a lot of them have been marketing analysts. So like my background is I have my associates in marketing, and I have my bachelor's in IT, bachelor's of science in IT, and marketing has always been a passion of mine. I just really wanted to like find a way to combine two, because I love speaking and networking, and just really being able to get creative with things. So then finding new leads and new ways to help growth, whether it's with someone or a company or anything like that, like that has been a passion of mine. And that's kind of what opened the door for me with data analysts, like just doing research. And like I know you mentioned earlier, I think it was you or Hunter was saying how, you don't really know which path you want to get into yet, and people try to find that avenue. And that's what did it for me.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe it's not for you, it's not logistics, as you want to sort of get away from that and back to marketing somehow.
Yeah, like I love the marketing aspect of it, and just to be able to create a dashboard and also present your information and show what leads can be taken and how you can help insert in various areas. Like I love that. Okay.
And what sort of salary are you targeting for one of these roles?
I kind of chuckled when you guys mentioned when that was brought up, because I think sometimes I may seem hesitant, I kind of undersell myself, but my target salary would be, I would love to clear 80 to 125. 90 to 125. That would be very, very ideal.
Somewhere in the 90 to 125 range. And you're coming at this with like a couple years of sort of hands-on analytics experience and a marketing degree, and so that seems like a reasonable target to me. Cool. And when you said you're worried you're underselling yourself, are you worried that range is, when you say that range, are you worried that that's too high?
Yes, I'll be concerned that it's too high and I might just get shut down.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think as a it's a pretty wide range too, but as a starting point, I think that there are definitely jobs out there that pay that, and it sounds like you'd be qualified for a lot of them, based on what I've heard. So,
Thank you.
Interesting. So yeah, so tell me a little bit more about like what happens. So that sounds like you're not having any trouble getting interviews. So what happens during the interview? Like how do these conversations go? Which ones do you feel like you're doing well on? Where do you feel like you might be kind of coming up a little short?
I think they go fairly well. When it comes to really just, I guess, talking technical skills, I'm more of I can show you versus tell you. But I do display a good sense of speaking on it and going over various things when it comes to certain functions, or talking about full joins, and just like things like that when it comes to SQL, or even getting creative with Tableau, like speaking on how we can look at various data from like Google ads or your Facebook ads, and just put these things together to see what type of crowds you should be reaching out to. So I built a lot of experience as well, like just freelance and doing work for a couple private owned companies, and just growing from there.
Cool. Yeah. Any specific interviews where you feel like you kind of missed you missed something didn't go right, or the candidate, the hiring manager maybe walked away thinking this isn't our guy for one reason or another?
Yes. I've had one probably about 2 weeks ago where we're in an interview, and the first question he asked me, it was like I wasn't prepared for it at all. So it was a situational question in terms of, if we have one particular person who we're looking to staff up, so we're doing business and we want to ramp up our growth in terms of incoming calls by 50%. And he was like, the team that we have, they can only produce to get us to that 25% mark. But then I have one person who I just interviewed, and they're looking to the skills that they have and the system that they have in place, they can boost us up to about 75%. So the problem is that his salary that he wants is going to be double of what we're looking to spend as far as our budget. And me being faced with that, like right on, it was just like, well, I wasn't expecting that. And I think I kind of reacted like a deer in the headlights, where I just froze up and not really dove into it. Because I guess I was looking more so into the conversational piece of me speaking on, my hard skills and some of the skills that I'm good at, and just really going over what these things look like.
So was this sounded like sort of a case interview question? Is that about right?
Yes.
So they're looking for you to kind of do some mental math and say something that made sense about what they should do.
Exactly. In my opinion, like I was thinking, like, well, if this guy has these skills that he's ramping up the business, or he can bring to the business and ramp up tremendously. My thought is like, hey, why not? We can get this person to have him. We can implement the systems that he had. We can train our team on it, and it'll create a lot more growth in that way from the team. We're teaching our employees something new. We're also then getting into a new system if it works well that we can implement to other sectors of the company. And let's see how it goes from there. I guess my response to that, he was like, yeah, no, I was thinking more of I think you kind of went, he was like, I love the answer, but he kind of went a little bit too far into it. He was like, I'm thinking more on the financial side of things.
Okay, yeah. It's funny because it's like a really good answer. As you said that, I'm like, as someone with my business hat on, I'm like, yeah, you totally should like hire the guy and then use him to train your employees, and then like any extra cost sort of washes out. But yeah, I think in the context of an interview, like I don't see that question format come up that much for analytics, but I'm sure it does.
Yeah, I'm thinking that must have been a very specific example.
Yeah, that was like the first time I really had to deal with one like that. Aside from that, like a lot of the other questions I have, it's just really some more about skill set and what have I done to really showcase that, or how could I apply that within their business to help them grow. And a lot of it is just really on the marketing side, or even just in terms of finding new leads to help them grow their business in certain sectors.
And do you feel like you have a good kind of story to tell about how you sort of have the background to help them on the marketing front?
I think I do. Yes. I feel very comfortable with that from working. So like I worked with a private chiropractic physician, and we've done with a lot of executives and a lot of professional athletes and things like that. And I kind of took on what he had to bring in like various data that he may get leads from, various social media sites and things like that. And just really manipulated that to then showcase to him and some of his team, like, this is what we can do to help grow in this aspect. So I think for one, that shows the independence in me to continue to want to try to push an envelope, to introduce something to someone or a company that's very new to things, to show them what it can look like if we do this and if we do that, what positions we should go towards when it comes to marketing and showcasing certain things, which I was also able to do some A/B testing with them too, just to kind of see what's working and what isn't.
Yeah, sounds like you're bringing a lot of knowledge there. So, yeah, how many of these interviews have you gone through at this point?
Oh man, if I'm measuring out within the past 3 months, probably about 15 interviews. 15?
And how many offers?
I've had about 4 or 5 offers.
Okay, so it's not like you're not hitting. You're just maybe the offers were not what you were going for. What did you see in the offers?
So like one of the offers, it was one offer was $70,000, which that didn't fit comfortable with me. That's kind of on the ballpark where I'm at now. With another one, I'm big on, so like when I'm looking for companies, I'm big on culture. Like I work at Whole Foods, and the culture at Whole Foods is amazing. Like I love it. Everything about it, from the people who I work with to just like higher leadership roles or this global team. Like, it's great. So I'm real big on culture. So if I'm going to make a move, it's kind of like things got to kind of align within that as well. And with some of the places I've interviewed for,
it didn't fit. But maybe the salaries. Did you get some offers that where the salary was in the range you're looking for?
Probably a little short. So like the highest one I got that the culture didn't really suit for me was about 85. Which at that case, I guess like I'm comfortable with that to get going.
Yeah, right. And I think with someone in sort of your stage of the career can expect to see some growth in the next couple of years in terms of salary. So if you get 85 and everything else is perfect, that seems like a pretty good decision. But yeah, if it wasn't a fit, then forget it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about culture. Yeah, I guess maybe tell me a little bit more about what sort of companies you're applying to. Like, what is maybe give us a few examples, or yeah, like one dimension that I think is important for culture is it's kind of like stage of the company, like how far along are they? You know, working at a 10-person startup is going to feel a lot different than working at a 10,000 person public company. So yeah, where are you falling in that spectrum, and you know, any other facts or figures that are interesting?
There's been a lot of big name companies, so like Kroger, for example, or a couple cruise lines, Norwegian, like a lot of big name companies.
Got it. Okay. And okay, and that's what you're used to from Whole Foods, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've also, I mean, I've applied for small startup companies too. You know, companies that may have they're just now getting the ball rolling with things, and probably have about 50 or so employees, and you know, they're local. But I think in that case,
that's what I was gonna suggest, actually, is like, you know, I'm a startup guy, so you know, a startup guy would say this, but I think if you look at venture-backed startups that are in the, let's say, 50 to 100 person range, or even like 25 to 100 person range, a lot of them will be thinking about hiring, you know, early data people. Maybe you don't want to be the first, maybe you want to be the second. So maybe you look at, you know, companies that are a little over 100 people or something like that. But if a company is venture backed and hiring remote, that's a pretty good deal, because you can sort of expect them to be probably paying in the range that you mentioned, because those companies are moving fast and they have to, you know, pay competitively to hire as fast as they need to hire. And culture will be all over the place, right? You know, there's not a startup culture. There's, you know, every company is its own kind of snowflake, but you'll be able to suss that out in the interview process. And I think, you know, if you can make any generalizations about startup culture, is they'll tend to be pretty fast paced. They'll be young people. There'll be a lot of opportunity to learn and figure things out as you go. So the cool thing about working at a startup is you get to punch above your weight. You don't have to wait until, you know, the guy above you retires to do like the sort of analysis that he was doing, right? Like you can just sort of, if there's an opportunity, you can go for it usually. And yeah, so that's, I think, the one thing that's accelerated my career is working at startups where I could, you know, I think, you know, do work that if I were working at a, you know, a big tech company, I would have had to kind of wait in line to get my hands on.
Gotcha. You know, I never thought about it to that degree. That's a great idea to really search out for like those startup companies and, you know, hone in on that. I guess I looked at it more so on just like, you know, I worked with like with the private chiropractor I was mentioning. You know, I just looked at it like it's an opportunity, but I think it's a great opportunity. But also, if I'm looking at more startups, like where I can help them grow the same way I did with them.
Another great thing about you, Justin, specifically related to startups, is that you have experience in IT, you have experience in analytics, you have experience in marketing. A lot of startups need somebody who's well-rounded so they can work maybe multiple areas. You know, as I'm thinking, in my experience in Silvertone, it's been a startup. You know, I've done a little bit of everything at this point. You know, social media, marketing, consulting. You know, it's another. I'm sure Nathan could probably back me on this. That a lot of startups need to be pretty well rounded.
Yes, startups love generalists, and that's a really important dimension to call out. I think like the more mature the company, the more they're going to be looking for someone to fill a pretty specific role. Startups will definitely appreciate someone who's willing to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you can kind of carve out your niche and define your own role as the company grows. So that's that. If that's something that appeals to you, then working for a startup can be great. Now, that said, you probably don't want to go like market yourself as a guy who like wants to do analytics, but like is also willing to do a little IT. Like,
Yeah.
I think that then you could get stuck with like a bunch of provisioning laptops and like
Yeah.
not get to do what you want. So
Yeah. I had another question for you. So like being that you were, you dealt with a lot of hiring and things like that. In the IT field, like there's a lot of submissions that come through recruiters. So like, do you typically prefer hiring someone through a recruiter, or would you look at someone more so who applies straight through the company? And like how much weight does it hold obtaining an application or submission from a recruiter than it does just from?
yeah, so sitting in the hiring manager seat, here's kind of what things look like is you're busy and you have a bunch of stuff flying across your desk, and you have invested some time in helping a recruiter understand what it is you need. And so if they find someone, it means that they've screened them and talked to them, and that they think that based on your conversation, they meet your need. So it's not that I would assume someone who just applied online isn't qualified. It's just that they haven't been screened yet. And so from a time management perspective, it's a better use of my time to talk to the person who came through the recruiter than came through the online resume submission. And by the way, like someone's got to screen those online resumes. Sometimes the recruiter is doing it. Sometimes the recruiter is not looking at that pile, and it's kind of like on the hiring manager, or maybe not really on anyone to like look at them in a timely manner. And so you have a lot of these kind of black hole resume submission situations where those maybe someone will look at it, but it'll be like in a month, and by that time there'll be 10 other people sort of further on in the pipeline, and they'll get the job and you won't. So yeah, I'd say like recruiters are sort of like a necessary evil in that regard. Like they're connectors. They filter down candidates and kind of make relevant connections. So I think that's probably, if I was applying to stuff, I'd probably be going a lot more through recruiters than just submitting resumes online, especially if they're reaching out to you anyway, right? Because if someone has engaged a recruiter, they want to fill the position. It's a real position, and if the recruiter thinks you're qualified, you're going to talk to the hiring manager. So that's a kind of a bit of a faster track, I think. That said, I think a lot of people will sort of limit their job search to applying online and talking to recruiters, and I think that's the front door to a job. And then there's also the back door to a job, which is as networking. And I've found most opportunities in my life that way, especially the good ones. The one exception is actually electric. So the company I was just at for 4 years, which had an amazing journey there, and it was a good outcome for me. That I got through a recruiter, but that was the only thing in my life where I got something through a recruiter or through just a resume drop. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the sort of organic networking approach, where maybe you're posting some content online about stuff that you're interested in, stuff that you're good at, finding people who are into kind of the same thing and just adjacent to maybe job openings that you'd be interested in, and just talking to them. It's being like, hey, found you in the course of researching X, Y, or Z. I'm interested in having the sort of career you've had. Would you be open to 30-minute intro chat? Have a few of those, and you probably come across some job opportunities.
Nice. That's great to hear. Thanks for sharing that. I got my LinkedIn page if you guys want to check it out.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Have you done, Justin? Have you done the LinkedIn optimization yet with John David, or no?
I have not. No, I have not. No.
Okay. I'm sure.
Wait, so you mean like when we change like the open to work and everything's like things
Yeah,
like that?
we just take some of the headings and or take some of the like the key kind of the keyword stuff. And
Yeah, so we did dive into
It's all
that.
about the keywords.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
we dove
talking
into
to a tech recruiter
change.
the other day, and
Uh,
that's how they find their candidates. It's like they're filtering on, a little bit of what company people worked for, but also like mainly just keywords in the job description.
Same thing goes for your resume. You might want to. I don't know if you've run your resume through a like a keyword optimization checker. I don't remember. There was one website that I used not too long ago. It's though that they do a pretty good job of. Those are just the same tools that the recruiters use. So it's like you get to see basically what the recruiter is seeing.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. The person I was working with who helped me with redesign my resume, like she was telling me that's a big thing because in most cases, like which being on the IT side of things too, with the knowledge of that, like in most cases, you submitted your resume and your application. If your keywords need to come up within the system, it just automatically sends you the letter.
Like Job Scan. Job Scan is the name of the site I'm thinking of.
Cool. So yeah, I'll give that a shot up again as well. But yeah, so I got the open to work on here.
Do you want to go ahead and share your screen real quick?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go.
Okay, let's pull it in. So here we are looking at Justin's LinkedIn page here.
So scroll down. Here's some of my work experience here. It's more in detail of my media analyst position I've held. And then as far as the e-commerce team leader, that's the one I'm working on. I still have to add more details into that.
So you're mentioning you want to do marketing analytics. Do you have any mention of that in your heading? I didn't actually get to read your heading.
Oh, I'll go back to the top. So like up here, I don't. So that's a good idea to add that to there.
Yeah, Nathan, do you have
Yes,
any
I might
thoughts?
have. Yeah. One thing is I might have misunderstood you. So it looks like from your profile you've been working for a bit longer than I thought. Like, what are you?
Oh yes, I've been
How
working
long
for a
ago did you
while.
graduate college?
I graduated college in 2014, I believe it was.
Okay.
It's been a
So
while.
you're not just getting started. You're in this.
It just took me some
Yeah, I
time
mean,
to really figure out the direction I wanted to go and like to just really hone in on what I want to do.
yeah, man. Don't worry. You're still just getting started.
Cool.
Yeah, the one thing that jumps out to me as possibly an area to improve here is your Whole Foods experience doesn't play up the data analytics aspect of what you're doing.
Okay.
Both in terms of like the content, right? The content's not in there yet. Well, actually, no. Now I'm seeing store team support leader, and it's a little hard for me to see all the text here, but yeah, I think sort of playing up the analytics aspect of what you're doing
Okay.
At Whole Foods would be useful. And yeah, I think when you're hiring for a job, for better or for worse, people are trying to kind of put you in a category, right? They have their job title, and if the job title is X, they want to say based on the profile, is this person an X? And so you're sort of emphasizing this team leader aspect of who you are, which you say that's the first thing in your header: servant team leadership, which is great, and I think something that's going to be useful to you in your career. I would just ask, is that the right thing to put front and center on your LinkedIn profile if you're looking specifically for a marketing analytics position?
Gotcha.
Maybe you can use that real estate to emphasize data skills or marketing knowledge.
Okay. Thank you. One thing, my resume. So like John, he really had me go with my resume and just be a lot more quantitative within it, like mentioning, certain improvements I've done and things like that, like just how I've helped growth with in certain aspects. So that's something that I have to cater my LinkedIn page more to my resume. So like, it's not completely synced up all the way, but that's something that I do have to do, and I'm aware of that.
Yep. It's an advertisement, pure and simple. You gotta, yeah, I think that the mistake people make is thinking of it as a form of self-expression, which it's a tool to achieve a specific purpose, and that's it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Also, as you start developing your I'm going to go ahead and just pull us up here again. As you go ahead and keep developing your work experience, specifically in analytics, you can also something that I like to do is fill in some of those on the featured section of your page, just so that people, well, as long as it's like, not proprietary or something like that, but just so that people can see the kind of style that you have with your work. It's just something. We just talked last episode with Alex Epperly, and he was mentioning that if you think you don't have anything to show them something.
Yeah.
It's always nice to be able to just visualize, and then from there, like tell a story about your
more
work.
into it.
Yeah.
That's something, like being in this apprenticeship program, that's something that, I've learned as well. Like, John just really puts you in this state of like, show something, like put it out there. Don't be hesitant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, create this, use this. And I'm sure you got something in there that you do from day to day. And like, it helped me dig deep, in which, I'll be finished with my public tablet portfolio probably this afternoon, because I'm working on a couple cool dashboards that I'm going to put up there. And, me being such a creative person, I just didn't want to just throw just something plain out there. So I think what I got, it looks pretty awesome. And, follow from that, like I'm working on the second one. But I enjoy it. I'm always pulling up data sets and just seeing what I can do to try to change things around. Just trying to dig deep and look at new leads for things.
Yeah, I'll give a +1 to that advice. Hitting publish is that's how it happens. You got to hit publish. Now, if all it takes you is one more afternoon, then go ahead. Nothing wrong with sprucing things up before you publish. But having stuff out there leads to opportunity.
Yeah. So we're rapidly approaching the hour mark. Justin, is there anything else that you wanted to run by Nathan?
I think.
Yeah, we've asked you a lot of questions, but what do you have for us?
Oh, I guess a lot of the knowledge you showed me as far as like what you're looking for, and just the insights that I gained was just more so what I can do to cater more towards what I want to get in. That really shared a lot with me. The biggest thing, it's funny, the questions I got now, I think we kind of answered it. It's like the sense of importance with the resume, and just how should you display yourself on your LinkedIn profile, in which we went over that. With the recruiters' questions that I had, and then the technical skills as well. That's some of my big keys. Yeah, I'm pretty good, honestly speaking.
Yeah, if I could kind of sum up what I think based on this conversation, I think you have a top of the funnel problem. It's not how you interview. It's not. I mean, you got 5 job offers, or 4, I forgot. But you're not failing to get jobs. You're failing to get jobs that you want. And so you've been applying to stuff through this platform and through LinkedIn, and applying to certain types of companies. I think you've got to try other avenues to find opportunities. So putting content out there and using that as a way to network is definitely one of them. And then, my 2 cents is you should kind of try filtering down on young growing startups that want to have a generalist, someone who's going to sort of value your enthusiasm and not ding you for not knowing Power BI. I I think that's where the opportunity might be for someone like you.
Wow, that's great to hear. The insights you said, I didn't really think about it to that degree, and that's I'm gonna make sure to try to focus on that. Think so when you're looking at say like somebody's public portfolio, like what is it that you're looking for? What is it you're trying to get?
Do they make sense? Do they have a little bit of a creative flair? Do they seem like an interesting person who I'd like to work with? Not looking for anything too advanced, just kind of like an indication that someone cares about what they do and is good at it. Most people I've hired have not had a public portfolio, to be perfectly honest. I see it as something that's kind of like an extra differentiator for a candidate. It's not table stakes. It's kind of like the next level. Like, oh, cool. This person is like trying to differentiate themselves in public. Which maybe I think you might need if you're trying to kind of break into a new field, which is not quite what you're trying to do. But anyway, I recommend having the public portfolio. But yeah, I'll be honest. I'll say I haven't reviewed a ton of them. I hired one guy who had a great website where he wrote about data topics. Ended up being a great hire. A few others who had little bits of this and that online, but lots of people who are just like, hey, here's my resume. Talk to them. Seem smart. Here's an offer.
Wow, awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing those insights with me. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, happy to help, and I'm curious to follow your journey and hear how things go. I might also have a few ideas for you, so if you want to chat offline, I can maybe make an intro or two.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sounds perfect. So Justin and Nathan, for those who are listening and they've been enthralled by this beautiful conversation and they want to reach out to you guys, where's the best place that they can do that?
I'll start. So my personal website is nathangould.com, and you can find all of my social links and contact info there.
All right.
For myself, my name's pretty common, but LinkedIn.com, Justin Miller, or you can even email me, justinleonmiller@gmail.com. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this episode then. Guys, it's been a great time. And Justin, it seems like you've gotten a lot out of this conversation. So
I did. Thank you so much once again, Nathan, for sharing the information. And, I look forward to chatting offline and just really building that network and fostering the growth and just really being able to tell my story later on about what you offer me. So appreciate it.
Sounds good. Good hanging out with you guys. This was fun.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye.
All right, take care.